Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Today is the 19th day of Teves, but tonight is the 20th day of Teves, is the Yahrtzeit of the Rambam. We're going to speak we'll have a separate clip on Rabbi Glatstein. Today's shir is dedicated by my dear friend, Dr. Gedalia Schwartz of Norfolk, Virginia, who has been a partner in the Yahrtzeit Torah for over a decade. And we're Mavarechim, Shafa Bracha V'Hatzlacha. If any now, Gedalia mans the WhatsApp groups. There are many WhatsApp groups. How many are there? 7, 8 WhatsApp groups. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people on it. If anybody wants to join the groups, go to our site, rabbidg.com, and your life will never be the same. So, okay, so we're going to speak a little bit about the Rambam. It's very interesting that the Chidah brings down in the Shem HaGdolim that the Rambam considered his Rebbe the Rimagash, which is not really accurate. You should know, when the Rambam says the Rimagash was his Rebbe, he doesn't mean he learned by the Rimagash, because the Rambam was only 7 years old when the Rimagash passed away. However, the Chidah brings down elsewhere that in the Sefer, the Chidah brings in the Sefer Chadrei Baten that the Rambam kissed the hand of the Rimagash, and everything he was zeicha to in Torah was for kissing the hand of the Rimagash. And our good friend Reb Daniel Maimon, he's a descendant of the Rambam, right? Something like that. Maimon, I mean, that's not I don't have, if your name is Maimon, that's a pretty good sign. Okay, so the Rambam says that the Chidah brings down in the Chadrei Baten that he was zoichet to all of his gadlus because he kissed the hands of the Rambam. Now, the Rambam writes about the Rimagash in his Hakdama to the Perush HaMishnayos. Ki leiv ha'ish hahu b'Talmud, the knowledge of the Rimagash in Talmud, mavis l'mishe yistaka b'dvarav, is astounding, is frightening. To think about what the Rimagash knew, the Rambam says is frightening. I had this chus this summer to be at the cemetery where the Rimagash is buried in Spain. Also, the Rif is buried there. Now, there's a very famous maxim: Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. You ever hear that? Anybody here named Moshe? Any Moshes over here? You ever hear the expression, your name is Yehuda, right?
Yehuda Moshe.
Yehuda Moshe?
Oh.
Wow. Yehuda Moshe, come here. Well, afterwards, I have something for you. What does it mean, Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe? Simply it means, from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, no one was as great as him in learning. I read an article last night by Reb Tovia Prashel that the phrase Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe has been applied to many, many Gedolim since. At least a dozen. The Ramah, Reb Moshe Cordovero, many Gedolim we said Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. But the Chidah says there's a deep secret in this phrase, Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe. By the way, the Ritva brings it, and that is from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until the Rambam, you will not find any Tana, Amoira, or Goin who was called Moshe. It's such a common name. It's the most common name. From Moshe Rabbeinu until the Rambam, we don't know anyone who is named Moshe. Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. That's what the secret that the Chidah brings of Mi Moshe v'yad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. Now I want to tell you something. Many years ago, Rabbi Glatstein Schwartz got me a sefer. It's called Toras Chemed of the Ramazan Rabbi Michal Ber Weissmandel. And I knew there was a remez in it, and I could never find it. I was going to bring in the English book where this remez appears, but I figured since Gedalia is coming this morning, maybe I'll give it one more try, and I found it. Okay, you ready for this remez to the Rambam? Okay, the Ramban says that every person, tzaddik or a rasha, is merumaz in the Torah. We know the student of the Ramban was a man by the name of Avner who went off the derech, and Avner asked the Ramban, where is my name in the Torah? And the Ramban said in the pasuk, Amarti afehem ashbisa me'enosh zichram. The third letter of these words is Avner, meaning it was a remez that Avner would be destroyed, and he went up to the roof, and that was the end of him. He jumped off. So they say in the name of the Ramban that the Rambam is Merumaz in Parshas Bai. Why? Coming up, Yehuda Moshe, you know that in 2 weeks it's going to be Parshas Bai. And Parshas Bai. And you know that there's a remez, you know that the Rambam was named after Moshe. Right? So there's a remez to Moshe. Why? It says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Lo yishma aleichem paroi, Laman revois moivsai be'eretz Mitzrayim. Revois moivsai be'eretz Mitzrayim is Rashi Tevois. Rambam. Okay, fine. Because we know, first of all, he lived in Mitzrayim. And the Rabbi Michal Bar Weisman says he thinks this is in the Shem HaGedolim. I'm not sure about that. But there, it does not quote it from the Ramban. Fine. So says Rabbi Michal Bar, let's make the following scientific experiment. Let's take the words, let's go to the words, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Skip 49 letters from the mem of Moshe, you get Moshe v'Aaron asu, the shin. Skip 49 letters, you get the nun of Bnei Yisrael. Skip 49 letters, you get the hey of HaChodesh Hazeh, Mishnah. Now skip 613 letters. You get tough. Skip 49 letters, you get a vav. Skip 49 letters, you get a reish. Skip 49 letters, you get a hey. Mishnah, Torah. So the remez to the Rambam of Laman, Revois, Moivsai, Be'eretz, Mitzrayim, that's Rambam. From the mem of Moshe, you skip 49, 49, 49, Mishnah, skip 613, Torah. So you say, why do you skip 613? The answer is the Rambam says the Mishnah Torah is explaining the 613 mitzvahs. So that's a remez to the Rambam in the Sefer Torah's Chemed of Rabbi Michal Bar Weisman. That's amazing, no? Doctors, we have a remez to the Rambam, yeah? In the Chumash. But we're not finished. Okay. I'm going to tell you another remez. But before we do that, the Chumash. Does anybody know the last words? And I'm telling I said this on Friday, but this is just by way of introduction to where we're going now. The last words that Yaakov Avinu ever said. Yaakov Avinu was talking to his children, and he's saying, please bury me in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah. There I buried Abraham. There Abraham buried Sarah. There Abraham buried Sarah, his wife. There Yitzchak buried Rivka, his wife. And there I buried Leah. But it doesn't say that Leah was his wife. Isn't that interesting? It says, there Abraham buried Sarah, his wife. There Yitzchak buried Rivka, his wife. There I buried Leah. So Dr. Menachem Fuchs said, why doesn't it say that there I buried Leah, my wife? Because he's talking to Yosef. He needs Yosef to take care of this. He has to be very sensitive not to refer to Leah, right, as his wife. And simply, Rashi always says, Rachel is the Ikaras Habayis, right? And then Yaakov says, you know what the Ma'aras HaMachpelah is? It's Miknei, Hasada, V'Hama'ara, Asher Boy, Me'ez B'nei Ches. Those are his final 8 words. So, does anybody know what year did Yaakov Avinu pass away? So let's make a simple cheshbon. The Yidden left Mitzrayim in the year 2448. Avram Avinu was born in 1948. 500 years later, we received the Torah. They went down to Mitzrayim 210 years earlier in the year. 210 years before 2448 is 2238. Yaakov Avinu lived in Mitzrayim for 17 years. That means he passed away in the year 2355. The gematria of the last pasuk that Yaakov Avinu says, Miknei Hasada v'Hamara Asher Boy Me'ez B'nei Ches, is gematria 2355, the exact year that he died. That's from the son of Rav Moshe of Kashnitz. Okay, fine. So with that introduction, there is a teaching from the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says the number of psukim in the Torah, something like 5,800 and change, correspond to the years of the world's existence. The Rambam was born in the year 48 95. The Rambam was born in the year 4895. Let's go to the 4895th pasuk in the Chumash. Be'ever hayarden be'eretz moyav. Be'er Moshe es ha-Torah hazois leimar. Moses began to explain the Torah. 4895th pasuk. Be'ever, at the beginning of Devarim. Be'ever hayarden be'eretz moyav hayil Moshe be'er es ha-Torah hazois leimar. And I would humbly add, why be'eretz moyav? Because the Rambam was a descendant of David HaMelech. So be'ever hayarden be'eretz moyav hayil Moshe be'er es ha-Torah hazois leimar. So I'm going to tell you a little story. In the year 1978, Maran Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was invited by the Kehillah in Spain to inaugurate a yeshiva in Madrid. And in that context, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was invited to meet King Juan Carlos, who is a very wise king. He lived from 1975 to 2014, and then he abdicated to his son Felipe. Rabbi Ovadia respected King Juan Carlos greatly, not only as a world monarch, but also as a very wise man. And Rabbi Ovadia had a halachic dilemma upon seeing King Juan Carlos. He knew he should make the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem l'Elokeinu melech haolam, shechalak mikvoidoi lebasar v'dam, that you make on a world monarch who has the power of life and death. But he also held he was a very wise man, and that you should make the bracha, shechalak mechachmasoi lebasar v'dam. So Rabbi Ovadia wanted to know, should he make two separate brachas, or should he make one bracha? And Rabbi Ovadia paskind, it's recorded in Shiurim Rishon L'Tzion Chelek Aleph, page Beis, that he should combine both brachas into one, and he should say the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shechalak mikavoidoi umechachmasoi lebasar v'dam. Frekt Juan Carlos to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, and this is recorded in the Hakdama of Ma'orei Yisrael. Frekt Juan Carlos, is there a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfardim, or is it like a different religion? Good question, no? We all want to ask that question also, but we don't have the guts. But Juan Carlos wanted to know, is Ashkenazi and Sfardi different religions, you know? Are they like denominations of, you know, or is it the same religion? Rabbi Ovadia says the exact same thing. Torah achas u'mishpat echad l'kulanu. The only difference is in minor ritual discrepancy. By the way, Rabbi Ovadia writes that when we entered the palace, it was very hot. And we just came off the plane. And my Rebbetzin, who is Rabbi Ovadia's Rebbetzin? Rebbetzin Margalit. She was white, she was famished. And the queen saw that she was famished. She got out of her throne. And you know, if you know, in Spain, they have these big buildings with windows on the top. And you need to take a stick and lift up the window. And the queen got off the throne and opened up the window for Rebbetzin Margalit. Says Rabbi Ovadia, it was a kiyum of the Nevuah. That queens will serve us. That was Niskayim when the Queen of Spain served my wife. Fine. Then King Juan Carlos said to Rabbi Ovadia, Chatanu avinu pashanu, to your people 500 years ago, when we kicked your people out of Spain. And you should know, in the process of the Inquisition, many Jews went to Amsterdam in Holland, and they were accepted there in open arms, and that's where the very first Bible was published, printed. Says Juan Carlos, I have the copy of the first Bible ever published. I learn it every single day. And now Juan Carlos asked Rabbi Ovadia, the best kasha I ever heard in my life. Frekt Juan Carlos to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. How many Sfardim live in Israel today? So Rabbi Ovadia said, well, Sfardi is a very generic term. Eidos HaMizrach, Jews from Bavel, from Egypt, from Morocco, from Syria, from Yemen, from Russia, from the Balkans, they're all Sfardim. So at this point, King Juan Carlos asked Rabbi Ovadia an amazing question. Why would you call a Jew from Yemen a Sfardi? He was never in Spain in his whole life. Why would you call a Jew from Syria a Sfardi? Why would you call a Jew from Egypt a Sfardi? They're not Spaniards. Why are we calling every Jew who's not Ashkenazi a Spaniard? It has nothing to do with Spain. They were never there. Their ancestors were never there. This was such a good kasha. Rabbi Ovadia published the kasha in his sefer, Ma'orei Yisrael. Says Rabbi Ovadia, an answer which is such ga'oinus, is mamish, a yisoid musad. Says Rabbi Vadia, we know that Klal Yisrael is different than any other nation. Ein umasenu uma ela b'Torah. All other nations have a common land, a common language. But the Jewish people, we are defined not by our language, not by our land, but by our Torah. Says Rabbi Vadia, any Jew who accepted upon himself the authority of the Rambam is a Sephardi, is a Spaniard. Because the definition of a Jew, your identity is, who do you learn Torah from? If you accept the Rambam, you're a Spaniard. Vayitav hadavar b'nei hamelech vayaskein. King Juan Carlos was beaming that Jews all over the world call themselves Spaniards because they're Mekabel, the authority of the Rambam. So a Jew from Yemen in Teiman, they go like the Rambam, straight, nobody else. So they're Spaniards. Then King Juan Carlos gave Rabbi Vadia a cross. And Rabbi Vadia wrote a tshuva that it's mutter to keep. And a cross is not avodah zarah, because it's just a symbol. Many years later, Rabbi Vadia had very bad joint pains and other difficulty in the mishpacha. So his wife brought in a makubal to check the mezuzahs. And they checked the mezuzahs, and the makubal said, do you have avodah zarah in the house? Rabbi Vadia said, get out of here, you're an imposter, you're a charlatan, you don't even know a blatt Gemara. I don't have arthritis because I have the cross is mutter. I have arthritis because I learned Torah as a kid in a wet basement. Do you know a blatt Gemara? He tested him, the guy didn't know a blatt Gemara. He threw him out and he called him, we'll leave it at that. So don't be nispoil from charlatans. Anyway, that was one of my favorite stories. Okay. What else do we have on the Rambam? The Rambam was born in Spain. He was born in Cordova. His father then had to run away to Fez. They didn't have safe haven in Fez, and they came to, by the way, the Rambam was born on Erev Pesach in 1135. They didn't have safe haven there, and they came to Eretz Yisrael. Ultimately, the Rambam went into a business deal, a partnership with his brother David, who was a merchant, and David supported the Rambam. However, David went on a business trip to India, and his ship was lost at sea, and the Rambam fell into a very great state of morose and depression, where he couldn't get out of bed for an entire year. Upon his new reality that he didn't have support, that's when the Rambam became a doctor. He didn't serve as a doctor, he was forced to because he didn't have livelihood. At that point, he describes his daily schedule where he would work most of the day for the Sultan, and he would come home at night, and he literally had no strength at all left. And really, it's amazing that the Rambam was able to produce what he did. Legend has it that the Rambam was ultimately buried in Tiberia, and that is a major topic, what evidence there is that he's buried in Tiberia. But those are, now, share with you something else. My great-grandfather was a Talmud of Rabbi Shula Mikutna. Rabbi Shula Mikutna was one of the great Gaonim in Poland, one of the sharpest minds in Poland, Rabbi Shula Mikutna. And my great-grandfather's name was Pesach Moshe Goldman. He was a Talmud of Rabbi Shula Mikutna. Shula Mikutna wrote a sefer Yeshuas Malkai. Okay, it's a commentary on the Rambam. In the Hakdama of the Yeshuas Malkai, he brings, why do I call the sefer Yeshuas Malkai with the word Melech? He says, if you notice, most of the Perushim on the Rambam have the word Melech in it. Why is that? He says, because if you look in the Arizal says the Rambam had the neshama of the Amoira Shmuel. Now Shmuel was a doctor. Shmuel in Shas is called Aryoich, Melech Elasar. Shmuel is called Melech. Therefore, Al Pi Hashgacha Elyoina, all the Mefarshim on the Rambam have the word Melech in it, because the Rambam was the Gilgal of Shmuel, who was a doctor, who was known as Melech Elasar. So, many years ago, I saw in the writings of the Torah Tamima, he says that if you look, there's a difference between the Rashba and the Rambam. And I was afraid to say this over, because the Baal Torah Tamima brings that if you look at a Rashba, you can't ask any questions on the Rashba. It's solid, it's like ironclad, there are no weak points, so to speak. But on the Rambam, there's so many questions. And the reason for that, he says, is that the Rashba learned with Talmidim. So everything was ironed out like 1,000 times, but the Rambam was on his own. And this is what the Baal Torah Tamima writes. And I was very scared to say this over, because how could you say anything that even intimates that there's any chesaron at all in the... So I spoke to the Shvilei Pinchas, or Pinchas Friedman. I asked him, am I allowed to say this over? So he said you could say it over in the following nusach. That of course, there are no weak points in the Rambam. We paskin like the Rambam is one of the 3 Amudei Torah. But why does it seem like to us that there's so many questions on the Rambam and the Rashba? It's like, the reason it seems that way to us is the process that the Rambam was put to paper did not go through the same procedure as the Rashba. But of course, the psak of the Rambam is one of the Amudei Olam. Anyway, that's how the Shvilei Pinchas advised that we could say this over. Okay, Zechusai Yagein Aleinu, Amen. Don't go anywhere. You can't.